Hi, my name is Dr. Chaya Kobernick. I'm a clinical psychologist and founder of the CBT DBT Center. And I wanted to give this class on caring for ourselves and our families during crisis. I hope to address a few important points and to leave you with some helpful resources. So, I wanted to start off by talking about anxiety, which I think is probably the most relevant topic when it comes to emotional wellness right now in people's minds. Anxiety is a normal emotion, as much as there's misinformation about this out there. Anxiety is an important and normal emotion that's part of our general, healthy, normal emotional functioning of every human on this planet. Hopefully, if you're missing anxiety, it's a deep and concerning issue. But for most humans, anxiety is a normal emotion that shows up to varying degrees depending on our biological makeup, our upbringing, and our life experiences to varying degrees. So, anxiety is an emotion that shows up when there is real or perceived danger. So, it's the perception of danger that is relevant to the emotion of anxiety more than reality itself. So, somebody might be in no danger at all and be experiencing extremely high levels of anxiety, and somebody might be in actual extreme danger and not be experiencing much anxiety at all. And what we ideally and would be most helpful and healthy to experience would be the right amount of anxiety depending on the true amount of danger. So when there is true danger, we want to feel anxiety because anxiety is an emotion that will serve to protect us. So anxiety is what motivates us to focus in, right? So lately there's been these warnings before a siren. But even when just the siren goes off, that is the warning or the siren acts as a like a signal to start feeling anxiety because there is danger potentially approaching. So since there is potential danger being communicated to us. Our brain gets the message, oh, hey, there's something dangerous happening here. You should do something. And so that focuses in our attention on what do I need to do right now? What needs to happen inside my body? So, for example, attention is directed away from unimportant functions of the body. Most notably, usually that's digestion and reproduction, and focused in towards very important functions like pumping blood to where we would need blood in order to escape or fight off a danger. But more specifically, it helps me to hyper focus in on instead of like I'm using the more thinking through and problem solving part of my brain to think through like, what has to be done later today, or thinking about bigger problems in the world, like like why is Hashem doing this, right? I'm not going to necessarily think about that when my brain is telling me, oh no, there's danger coming. I'm going to be focused in on where's the baby, where's the nearest safe area that I need to get to, what has to be, where's my phone if I want to bring my phone with me, what has to happen right now in order for me to get to me and my family to get to a safe place. So anxiety is going to help us focus in on that. It's going to turn off the unimportant or the less important functions, which is why under high stress or under high pressure, we're not going to necessarily think straight. We're going to be focused in on what's really dangerous, needs to be prioritized and dealt with right now. And we're also not going to prioritize, like I said, those other less important functions, which is why some people will get like digestive upset or like, like your stomach bothering you because digestion slows down. So if we're under high levels of stress for even a small amount of time, it is normal to have a digestive reaction to that. So my point was that anxiety is a normal, healthy, and helpful emotion that shows up when there is danger. People like to use different words for this. If a different word sits better, the reason I like to use the word anxiety is just because anxiety is what people are used to using for a lot of things and viewing it as a negative thing. And I like to just use one term. So if you want to use the word fear, worry, it doesn't really matter in terms of understanding function. Yes, there are nuances that makes different emotions different, different versions of different emotions different, but I like to focus in on function. And so anxiety, fear, worry, they're all functioning the same way. They serve a very particular focus, which is protection from danger. They're showing up when there's a perceived threat or perceived danger. So, regardless of whether there is danger or not, perceived danger is going to set off that alarm bell in our heads, in our bodies, and get our bodies and heads prepared to protect ourselves. And so, that's a really helpful and healthy reaction. Just to note on, so we're going to talk a lot more about what to do about that. But there is a difference between chronic and acute stress. So right now, there's a siren going off. Right now, I'm standing outside and I'm seeing seeing rockets in the air, and I'm thinking, like, is this safe for me or my family to be outside right now? I'm evaluating my danger level right now. That's what's acute, what's happening right now. But at the same time, we've also been at war for a year and a half. And we've also been off schedule now for several days. And so when there's a buildup of, if there's a buildup of not sleeping a few nights, being off schedule a few days, being on edge or tension for a few days, and then also just more generally the bigger picture of like families being under miluim or work schedules not being regular or just watching the hostage situation, things that have been ongoing. That ongoing stress can leave us feeling really worn down, and it's normal to be feeling that way. That is really normal to be feeling that way. And so let's also talk about what we can do to restore some of our energy and be a little more protective over our energy, because we're under so much like chronic stress right now. I also want to note that it's really normal right now. We are, in this like off scheduled, off structure situation where and with potentially in tight quarters, potentially like I said, really most of us are going to probably be off schedule right now. And so it's normal to be having disagreements with loved ones. It's normal to be, feeling under pressure and to be really worried or stressed about that. And I want to just normalize and validate it, that it's probably expected. We can probably plan for it. Like, we are going to disagree. We are going to, be more likely to. And so I like to even just explain to kids, it's normal that we're going to fight with each other. It's normal that we're going to get upset with each other. It's normal that some of us are going to be sleep deprived and cranky. I like to use that word with my kids. Like right yesterday, she was cranky. That's okay, right? Like, we all knew it. We all knew she was cranky, right? That doesn't mean that she's mean. That doesn't mean she's a bad person. That doesn't mean we don't love her and don't want to spend time with her. That means we can understand that, give her space, try to give her what she needs, right? If she needs the house to be quiet right now, like, let's try to make that happen, because we love this person and it's normal that they're going to be cranky when sleep deprived, off schedule, etc. Under like a level of stress as well. So recognizing that disagreements are going to happen, they're not dangerous, and prioritizing connection as much as possible, and really like validating each other, seeing each other's struggles as totally normal and something that we as a family system can handle and deal with. Also to note on the topic of media, so I know that there's strong opinions about how to handle media, and I don't need to come in and give you mine. I just think it's important to just note for yourself, to be wise about your media exposure. I think that there's times when it's important to have slightly more versus slightly less media exposure. It's also important to moderate what sources you're using. And what times you're exposing yourself. So I think one of the biggest dangers is being under constant media exposure. I think that that's highly stressful. So it's like, imagine what I was saying before, right? About like, there's a warning or there's a siren, right? And your body starts to give all this response. You don't want to be under that response all day long. That would not be helpful, right? And so it's helpful to, check the news let's say 3 times a day. I like this WhatsApp account that I get an update from. It gives me an update morning, afternoon, night. That gives me a brief, basic summary of the news 3 times a day. I like that. I think that's different than, being signed up for notifications from Bikuda ORAF. That's different. But but I also personally like to have some knowledge of what's going on, in the minutes following a siren. So to me, that's what works for me, but every person is going to be different based on what their typical media exposure looks like. And so really being wise and intentional about it, picking particular sources, picking particular time frames, and focusing on not constant exposure to not have your body be under like that much chronic stress. um, okay. Now, sometimes we're under emotional crisis and when we're not. Now, when there's an actual emergency, right? When there is like, a siren happening right now's the time to pick yourself up, pick your family up, and get to a safe place. Like, that's the time to do that. Fine. But when we're under emotional crisis, so we got into the Khader Mamad, we got in Khader Mugan, or wherever we're going at this time to be safe, and we've closed the door, and now there's nothing more to physically do right now. Let's say maybe you start off by saying Parak Tehillim, whatever it is that that your family or whoever you're with has agreed to. You've done all the physical or practical things. And now maybe you're feeling an emotional crisis, or even just like, it's just been a really heavy day and you're just feeling emotionally really high up there. And I'm talking about like 80 to 100 zone. So when we're in emotional crisis, there are things that we can do to help ourselves to just come down a little bit. Now, I like to just acknowledge it's not that you need to do this. It's not, emotions are not dangerous. Emotions don't need to be, I think there's a really big misperception that we have to do something about emotions. We don't have to do anything about emotions. Emotions aren't dangerous. We can actually feel them. And it's actually really important to recognize and allow for emotions being normal part of human experiencing, and nothing needs to be done about them. That said, it can be useful, nice, helpful to know that there are options available. There are things that we can do. So when we're feeling very, very high emotional intensity and we want to decrease that intensity, it's important just to focus also on what is the goal here. It's not to fix anything. It's not to solve anything. It's just to bring down the intensity of the emotion. And it's also important to acknowledge that bringing down the intensity of the emotion doesn't solve anything. So it is therefore normal that the emotion is going to continue to go back up after. So it's not going to actually solve anything with time. It's not going to actually make it stay down over time. So let's say particularly right now, the kind of emotional distress, so that's like general emotional distress, but particularly, what we're talking about now is anxiety in the context of potential and perceived danger. And so since that's the particular emotion that we're focused on, like that would be it's possible somebody feels, guilt for not saying enough to him, or for feeling too anxious, or for, I don't know. So it's possible other emotions are very relevant here as well, but I'm focusing in on anxiety as the most like logical or most common emotion that's going to be showing up for people. So if my anxiety is very high and it's not serving me right now, right? So if there's something happening right now, that anxiety is extremely valuable and purposeful and useful. And nothing needs to be done about it right then, except dealing with the practical of what has to be dealt with. But now afterward, my emotions are still really high and I want to bring them down. Again, reminder, it's not going to permanently keep them down because it's not fixing or changing anything, but it will help to drop me out of that very high intensity. There are things that I can do, and the most like common helpful things that you can do is, first of all, there are things that you can do to immediately drop your physical arousal. So I like to use I didn't make this up. This is from DBT skills. There's a DBT skill called the tip skill that I think is just really useful for people to know because it's really targeted on a physiological arousal. So T in tip stands for temperature. We can use something called the dive reflex to activate the calm response, or the opposite of the fight or flight response. So the fight or flight response shows up when there's perceived danger. It gives that whole reaction I was mentioning before of slowing down certain unimportant biological functions, speeding up certain very important biological functions for managing, protecting against, dealing with, coping with danger, right? And so that opposite calming response, or rest and digest response, can be activated by this dive reflex, which is a reflex that our body has in response to diving into cold water. So you don't need to dive into cold water, although that would be so nice right now. I think pools are closed. So unfortunately, we don't have that as an option, but we can mimic it by and convince our bodies that we are diving into cold water by getting cold under your eyes with your head tilted forward, holding your breath. Four things: cold under your eyes, head tilted forward, holding your breath. There's many ways to do that. You can take, ice packs, put them under. You can take ice cubes, put them in Ziplocs, put them under. You can splash cold water on your face. Although I find that that's usually not sustained enough. You can fill the sink with cold water, dunk your face in, get a big bucket, dunk your face in. You can turn your shower cold for a few seconds and just tilt your face downward during that. So there are many roads to Rome, but the goal is a few decent seconds. I would say like at least 10 seconds up to 30, or as long as you can hold your breath. Hold your breath, head tilted down, cold under your eyes is going to activate this rest and digest or calming down system of your body. The I stands for intense exercise. So this is not about exercise. This is just about intense movement right now. So this is something you could do in a Khadr Mugan, is to do 20 jumping jacks, or we're going to do 10 push-ups, or we're going to jump rope for 30 seconds. It can be a great family activity, but something very vigorous, movement, brief, gets your heart rate up, and it will activate that same reflex. P, there's two options for P. So one is paced breathing. So I know there's a lot of different like breathing activities or breathing ideas out there. Unfortunately, I don't think they all hit on this really important point, which is to activate that calming reflex. Calming reflex, or that rest and digest response that we're looking to activate with these skills. It's really important to have longer, slower out breaths. And think about this logically for a second. When you're in fight or flight mode, you need to get more oxygen around to your body in order to be able to, run away or fight off the danger. And so when you're in fight or flight, you're going to be breathing like this more, trying to take in more oxygen. Now, there's nothing dangerous about this, right? People get really worried that like something bad's going to happen. They're getting lightheaded, they're getting dizzy. You will feel lightheaded and dizzy from breathing in more, yeah, but it's not actually dangerous by itself. It's not dangerous. It's not dangerous to have that response or to breathe in. Actually, they made us in graduate school do this for an extended period of time. Whoa, we didn't feel very good, but it was really like nothing happened to anybody. So it's not dangerous by itself. And if we want to physically calm down the body, we can use the opposite system by having long, slow out breaths. So, and it doesn't have to be, mouth, nose. It doesn't really matter. The point is to have long, slow out breaths. There are a lot of tricks to make that happen. But what I like to do is we call the skill paced breathing, to help people and myself use a pace for their breath to help like regulate the breath a little bit. So I might count into 4, hold for 4, and then out for 8 or 6. Or hold for 5. In for 5, hold for 2, out for 7. Whatever it is, as long as the out breath is longer and slower, you will activate that reflex. And that's a really helpful, option to be aware of. And the last P is about tensing and releasing, or we call progressive muscle relaxation. And this is another really nice one to do with kids. It's a nice one to do before bedtime for yourself or for kids, because you can guide them through it. You can guide yourself through it, and it helps to just focus and relax the body. You're basically tensing and releasing all your muscles. It's nice to start from the top, go to the bottom, or from the bottom, go to the top, where you're tensing and releasing each muscle in your body. This can be a nice, also funny activity to do with kids, where everybody like makes a really funny face, and everybody can laugh at that and can ease some tension there. But that's the tip skill. That's really helpful to be aware of. Also, just important to know, distract can be really helpful. Any ideas for distracting? And so I think this is where, people think of like, let's do a crossword puzzle or a Sudoku puzzle, or play a game, or, do something silly, unrelated, and like distract ourselves, can bring down that emotional intensity. Doesn't solve any problems. It doesn't deal with anything, but it brings down the intensity. And self-soothe. So there are things that we can do to physiologically soothe ourselves. I like to help people think in the context of our five senses. So, maybe having like special chocolate or special treat can be, soothing for our taste buds. There can be nice smells that can be soothing for our sense of smell. Um, um, touch, like maybe there's a special blanket, like because a lot of these are at night, we've brought like special blankets that each person has their own blanket in our Khadr Mugan, and having things that feel nice. There can be pictures that we like to look at or things that can be interesting. So those are so hopefully some helpful crisis strategies. Now, also equally, doubly, triply as important is filling yourself up. Like I was saying before about this kind of chronic stress we're under. And so that's so filling up your emotion. I like to call that like emotion vitamins, or like I also call like protecting your energy, or just making sure to be kind of really well resourced, right? If you know that like the flu is going around, right? You might want to like take some extra vitamin C to make sure that you've got extra immune support, right? That you're strong enough to fight off different things. And so we want to make sure that we're emotionally strong enough to handle what's going on. And so taking emotion vitamins is about a few different categories. I like to think of it like two basic categories. One is making sure that particular types of activities are happening in our lives. So under that category, we want to make sure that pleasant things are happening. We want to make sure that we are accomplishing things. We want to make sure that we're doing things aligned with our values and that we're connecting socially with others. So those are the four categories I think of that are really important to make sure that they're happening. Unintentionally, these things could not happen when we're off schedule, and that can leave us really emotionally deprived or like a more emotionally vulnerable. So that's an important category to think of. And then secondly, is to take care of your body so that your emotions can just be easier. We're just less depleted. So this looks like hydration, nourishment. I know I think it's easy to, or what I hear from people is to focus on like comfort foods or like treats. And while there's a place for that more under that like crisis category, if you want to be in it for the long game, focus on nourishment. What makes me feel well nourished, well supported. So, home cooked, healthy, wholesome meals. Maybe there's more time to focus on that right now. It's something I've been thinking about is I have time now to, really focus on making a high quality meal. Let me enjoy that time, maybe include the family in that process. And that can be really helpful for everyone to just be more resourced. Movement. It's really easy to forget about movement. Really, really important to keep moving. That will help you just to be more, like I said, like I'm talking about balance, like protected in your energy, feeling like you are well resourced enough to be coping. Getting sunlight, also easy to forget, especially when our sleep schedule is so off, but really focusing on getting lots of sunlight, especially early morning sunlight, can be really, really helpful for balancing your circadian clock, keeping your body on schedule, helping yourself to go to sleep when it's dark. So that can be really, especially like I'm finding that at night, because there's been so much activity at night, it's easy to be more like wired at night. And so that early morning sunlight and daytime sunlight can be really helpful in regulating that. And sleep. It's really hard to get good quality and uninterrupted sleep right now. So getting sleep when you can. I think scheduling a nap is really important and helpful. It can be even a half an hour nap, but scheduling time to be sleeping during the daytime, I think is really valuable in terms of like a sleep. If somebody struggles with insomnia, I usually am explaining why napping during the day is unhelpful. I think right now we are all having we're all having interrupted sleep, and so making sure that some nap is happening is better than being sleep deprived. So that's my vote. Although obviously speak with your own particular private person if you struggle with insomnia. In terms of this bigger picture, emotional vitamins, building up our emotional immunity, making meaning can also be really important. So this can look for different people differently. It can be like saying Tehillim. It can be, going to a shir. It could also just be like reaffirming your hashkafos, thinking through things. For me, I really like to journal. I really like to talk with my family members, talk with my kids through these concepts. to explain it to others or to explain my thinking to others. I have a lot of people from America checking and asking how we're doing, and I like to share my thoughts. That helps me to think through things or to make meaning, and to come to like healthier conclusions. And contributing, doing things that can be helpful to others, like me making this video that I hope is helpful to you, is a way of helping to make meaning and to feel more emotionally nourished and emotionally well supported or buffered. I wanted to particularly focus in a little bit on parents. So, although obviously a lot of what we mentioned already is very relevant, obviously, to parenting, and I mentioned, talking with your family members a lot, I want to just focus in on parenting right now. So one most important thing that comes to mind to me is to, yes, show emotions. Of course, you're experiencing emotions. Children are experiencing emotions. And by not showing emotions, you are communicating to your children that children, like as a bad thing, experience emotions, and so hopefully one day they can graduate to not having emotions. And that is not what we want to be communicating to our children. We want to be communicating to our children that emotions are healthy and normal and helpful, and here's how we handle them well. So when we show emotions, and I'm going to explain like how to show emotions, but when we show emotions, we communicate that. So we want to also show emotions within reason. If you are hysterical, if you are in a panic, if you have an anxiety disorder pre-existing, you have other pre-existing mental health issues, for sure, this is relevant. But even if you're just like in a moment where it's just really heightened for you, that's a time to, I would say, like, go to the bathroom, right? Go to the bathroom, go to your bedroom, right? Take five. Because that level can be scary to children and isn't necessarily helpful. Yes, it is helpful for children to see you be really worried, or to see you even get to a more heightened, like, oh my gosh, I'm really worried about all this, or I'm really, really nervous right now, or I'm really hyped up from what just happened, or I'm so shocked from what I just read in the news. That's really helpful because it helps children to allow for their own emotions and to see what healthy emotion regulation looks like. So you can share, oh my gosh, I'm so shocked. I just read this, whatever, or I just heard this, or I even just heard these booms and I'm just so shook. Here's what I'm going to do, or what I'm doing about that. So showing that I'm experiencing emotions is safe and okay. And here's what I'm doing about that is so impactful in modeling safe and healthy emotional expression and emotion regulation to children. It's also important to communicate to children that parents, I've said this in so many other forms, but I'm saying it particularly here, parents are in charge of children's safety. I think it's a little different for teens, but for children, so just pre-adolescent, so like up to age 13 or 12 or 13, children are not responsible for safety. They are responsible for listening to the responsible adults near them. So usually that's parents, but obviously there are situations where we're at school or where we're at a friend's house or whatever. But parents slash adults are in charge of safety. Children are responsible for listening to adults. And this is really important for children to understand, because their children can feel a big burden for safety. So for example, a child might feel like, you need to close the door, Ima, you need to close the door to the Khadr Mamad. No, the child does not need to be reminding the mother to close the door. The mother's in charge of closing the door. The child is responsible for keeping herself or taking care of herself while she's, okay, so she got to the Khadr Mugan. Fantastic. That's wonderful. Yeah, you did what you were supposed to do. You're listening to directions. You're not responsible for making sure the mother closes the door. Unless the mother said, like, I'm designating you as in charge to remind me because I'm dealing with other things. So I'm designating you as a reminder. Fine, that's different. But the child's not responsible for the safety, right? So, oh, I think there's going to be, a siren soon, or maybe I heard something, not the child's responsibility. And it's really important that children understand this, because it removes this massive burden. Children can feel immensely responsible for safety, right? I have to make sure my siblings wake up, or, whatever it is, they can feel immensely responsible for safety. Or let's say, like, the family goes to the playground and to the Gina, and a child is like scanning, where are we going to go if there's an azaka, or am I going to be responsible for making sure that my siblings get to a safe place or my friends? And no, it's not the child's responsibility to figure that out. It will be a great idea for parents to plan in advance or to discuss in advance what our plan is going to be so that children know what the plan is. That's a great idea. But children are not responsible for safety, and children need to know that. Um, it's really important that children feel safe and comfortable asking questions always in every single time of life, but particularly about this, is what we're focused on right now. So yes, children need to be able to answer questions and to know that their questions can get answered. Yes, answers should be developmentally appropriate, but we shouldn't be hiding like basic information because children will know and they will get it from other places. And to not be providing reassurance. So oftentimes parents will answer questions with, it's okay, or don't worry about it. And that's really patronizing and dismissive, and it erodes trust because children know that they're missing information. And so answering with facts, and then being there for the emotions of that as well. But answering with facts is really, really important for children to build trust, to come to you as the right address for their questions, and to continue to share their questions. I think building a family schedule is critical. Different people have greater or less needs for scheduling. I'm for sure aware of that. Some people are really fine on the fly, and some people are a disaster off schedule. And I think that if you are a parent, most of your family needs a schedule. Maybe not everybody does, right? Maybe one parent doesn't need a schedule. Maybe some teens don't need a schedule, but majority of the family does. Most people do. Certainly a family system will benefit from having some kind of schedule. Even if some people are not keeping to the schedule, that's totally fine, but at least they know, oh, the family eats around 1 o'clock. So that they have a basic sense of what's happening, and it's not just endless, unstructured time, which can feel really just unsettling. But even if we generally do the same things, I find my family generally does the same things every morning, every afternoon, and certainly on these days, we're pretty much doing the same things every day, right? It's not changing too much. And writing it out, having it really clear, being able to communicate to the family really helps everybody to feel a little more like, oh, okay, I know what's happening. It's a little more predictable, especially when there's so much unpredictability. This can feel really grounding, helpful, clear. It also takes the burden off. I think families can feel really burdened of like having to come up with a lot of ideas. And really, there's not so much. I found like once I built my schedule, I was like, I actually really need like 2 exciting, cool, different activities per day. Otherwise, we're pretty much, there we need to eat. We need to eat our meals. We need to go outside. We need to have free time. We need to daven together. We need to daven separately. We need to have like a quiet time or a nap time. Not everyone's going to sleep in that time, but like a quieter time of the day. There needs to be these certain pockets of the day, and then there can be the scheduled activities. Okay, sharing strategies with your family. I introduced some ideas for crisis survival. I introduced some ideas for general emotional well-being. Sharing that with your family is really, really helpful. I really like the idea of families creating an emotion crisis kit for their Chadar Mamad. It's really normal to stock your Chadar Mugan with practical things like flashlights, chargers, snacks, water, but it's also really important to stock it with emotional survival things. And that can be that popping chocolate is so fun and exciting. Bubbles, squishy toys, whatever, journals, nice smells, whatever, things that can be fun and helpful for emotion management under high stress. Fidget toys, great idea. So that's really important. Communicating it with the family, sharing ideas with the family, and like resourcing everyone. How to know when to get help. If you're feeling like the level of anxiety is massively interrupting your functioning, not even massively, if it's interrupting your functioning, meaning obviously everybody's functioning is off right now because none of us are sleeping regularly, none of us are on schedule, and so everybody's functioning is interrupted. But if your functioning is impaired, something is getting in the way of you being able to, show up for your family, show up for your responsibility, show up for work, whatever it is that, your responsibilities are, and that's being interrupted, then that is, to me, a time when either you need to go for treatment or it could be helpful to go to treatment depending on the severity. So if it's massively interrupting, like I cannot function, I cannot manage, then yeah, you really need to be in treatment to be able to help you with managing that. If it's interrupting your functioning, but you're managing, still you could really benefit from getting treatment for that, and you don't need to be suffering. Like I said in the beginning, anxiety is a normal emotion, and it can really get in our way. It can really go haywire. It can really take over and get in our way. And it doesn't have to. And so that's where treatment can be really helpful. If you're looking for a treatment provider, I really recommend reaching out to one of our wonderful English speaking referral agencies in Israel. There are several resources for finding good help. There's Relief, which does referrals. There is Amudim, which does case management and referrals. Chaim Chesed does a lot of everything. I don't think they particularly do referrals, but they might be able to connect you to the right agency that can help you out. And so I recommend reaching out to one of our wonderful agencies that we have over here to help us out. Also, I want to show you on the CBT DBT Center website. We have a lot of resources there. So I'm going to show you what we've got. So if you go to the cbtdbtcenter.com, navigate to learn more, our resources, and you can click on War Resources over here. We have in both English and Hebrew, we have some storybooks that I've written for young children about sirens, for children really about anxiety management and about a terror attack, and for children of Chayalim or children of Miluimnikim. There's another story for them. There's a book on resources for managing emotions during a war. There's parenting information for help during the war, crisis survival ideas. So some of those we talked about today. This is a little more in depth, talking to children about hostages and sleep during a crisis, which I think everyone needs information on. And so, yeah, so that's some of the highlights over here. And I hope these resources can be helpful. Everything is free under war resources right now. And you can definitely share this with anybody who it could be helpful for. So I hope that can be a help. And yeah, I hope this was helpful. Rosh Hashem, everyone should be safe and protected and emotionally well during a challenging time, and we should only grow from this and become stronger and healthier people in every single way. And be zocha to greet Mashiach very soon.